Welcome back to part 3 of Breaking Boundaries, where we are exploring Islamophobia, stroke, anti-Muslim sentiments in the West, with me, Brother Simon Marciniak, and Muhsin Abbas. We're on the home straight, right? We're on the home straight. Time has gone so quickly. I wanted to jump into a aspect of the discussion related to continuous incidents that every so often take place around the world, outrage, people claiming to be doing things in the name of Islam. And there's this argument that goes on in the mainstream press, in the mainstream media, that Muslims should apologize, should Muslims apologize generally for the actions of some loose thinking or bizarre thinking minorities that carry out despicable acts. What's your thoughts on the concept of kind of like generic apologies? From innocent parties who had nothing to do with the crime, because ultimately we're talking about criminal activity.
Well, if you're apologising for somebody, you're implying from that they've done something with your permission that's gone sort of off key. So it's just reinforcing the problem, if you like. Mm-hmm. So I gave him authority to do it, but he didn't do it quite right. It's that sort of insinuation. So this sort of language that Muslims are expected to apologise is then expected to trigger a guilt complex in the Muslim hearing it. So, oh yeah, okay, I'll apologise. I'm sorry for them doing that.
Yeah.
Not thinking, well, yes, but that implies that you're authorising it in a sort of oblique way.
Yeah.
But they've gone about it in the wrong way. So you're sort of generating a greater degree of suspicion on the part of the wider world about you and your motives and your behaviour. So it's no wonder in my view that people view Muslims generally as like ticking bombs, people who are prone to this sort of behaviour, who sort of condone. This is what David Cameron said a while ago, wasn't it? That whatever the percentage was of Muslims secretly condone the behaviour of jihadists. And being expected to apologise for the behaviour of that for them is part of that problem. So we ought to, in my view, to completely dissociate ourselves from the idea of apologies and saying, this isn't our responsibility. This is us and this is them. They're nothing to do with me.
I mean, Mohsen, you've heard it before. When you must have heard this in the mainstream press, that the imams and the religious clerics, Muslim clerics, they're not doing enough. That we need to hear more. I mean, I don't know how many clerics have access to mainstream press, the way that some of the fringe elements have without naming names, have made their way into Channel 4, Channel 5, and the mainstream BBC 1, BBC 2. The whole, the circuit. There were certain individuals that, when there was an incident or there's an issue, you could get you can get a big beard in there saying some inflammatory stuff. But how accessible were these stations for somebody with a Muslim thinker? That would be a bit more.
I think they're not very accessible. The track record shows that there are two extremes. You either have the complete apologists, reformists of Muslim Islam or whatever in the West, or you get the complete Sharia, the loony right-wing version of Sharia. And in between, the kaleidoscope of views that does exist is not entertained by the media, and I think they wanted this black and white binary dialogue, which is like a Punch and Judy show, I've often called it. It's like Punch versus Judy, that's all it is. And there are puppeteers in the background, arguably, who quite like that. And anyhow, so I mean, why should every white person today be held accountable for those deeds? They didn't do it, and why should a Muslim be held? It's a very simple argument, to be honest. But it is part of an agenda. I mean, that's a narrative, again, which is thrown out by right-wing neocons who have an unbalanced, again, a disproportionate.
One station uses the slogan "fair and balanced." Since you use that word "misbalanced," it was fair and balanced. Yeah. You know the station, you know the talk show.
Yeah, I mean, disproportionate
neocons,
disproportionate sort of emphasis on Muslims being accountable, Muslims doing this, generically homogenizing the whole Islamic thing. It's an old trick. It's a media trick, and it is. I think the media stands guilty. The mainstream media stands guilty of misrepresenting Islam, misrepresenting Muslims, deliberately, scurrilously doing it over 15 years. Unacceptable, totally. And Muslims are guilty of not being able to understand how to deal with those institutions and they remain powerless in terms of lobby groups at the highest level to be able to create the change that's required. If you had the Jewish community treated in the way that the Muslims are in the media, you know, I'm sorry, it just wouldn't happen. They would annihilate them. I mean, there was a gentleman called Joshua, I think today in the news, who was given a 3-year sentence for saying an anti-Semitic statement. And you see, that's a 3-year sentence. I think that's unheard of for somebody saying something about Muslims or Islam. That it wouldn't be possible to prosecute them even to that level. So I think first of all we need to address those systemic problems. We talked about addressing our own issues in terms of our understanding of the mainstream and engaging more. But before we even
so that you would say there's this need for engagement.
I'd say so, but again, I would be really scared of an average Muslim engaging with a non-Muslim when he doesn't even know about his religion. So even that's a problem. So if I get an average youngster from the street and I ask him, engage, poor chap, we haven't trained him.
He's not been equipped, you're saying?
Yeah, he's not equipped. He doesn't have the communication skills. He doesn't have the religious literacy. He doesn't have the public relations skills. He doesn't understand the environment. He doesn't understand the people he's dealing with. It's quite a professional job. The mosques and the centres are woefully inept in terms of their public relations. They're run by foreigners, imported foreigners, the most recent kind, who tend to dominate all of these institutions. And then they are absolutely ill-equipped to understand the mentality, the psychology of the British people. Now, those who've grown up here, and this is another phenomenon that's gone on within Muslims, mosques, etc., which is causing a huge own goal. Because they haven't grown up through the system here, they therefore are disconnected to everything from the educational mechanism through to the cultural institutions, through to the political institutions, and therefore their default position is to disengage. They don't know how to. And when they do try, it's very awkward, and it's in a way which is linguistically poor, and it's poor in terms of even understanding the more subtle nuances of British culture and mentality. Now, when you're in that situation and then you don't want to let go of that power and you don't want to engage people who are truly connected with that mindset, then you're going to have an epic fail if you go and try and do it. So actually, up to now, Muslims generally haven't engaged, and probably for their own good, because half of the things that they would come out with would be absolutely, for me, more own goals scored than they've already done. So first stage is training and understanding within the PR sections of your community, and genuine training and genuine review of your own religious curriculums. See, unless you understand your religion, you don't stand a chance here. They will pick you apart, and they're doing it bit by bit. In January will come the Sharia courts, because that's the latest flavour they're going to pick on. They're going to go and pick on all those old imams, those lovely old men who've been doing their Sharia for years, and they're going to go in and pick on saying, well, is it okay for a 9-year-old to marry? What would you say? Well, is it okay for you to divorce this? Is that man allowed to not give his wife a divorce?
I can imagine the chat shows. You're never going to hear the word medieval law used more. The word medieval used over and over habitually. Like, you can see it coming. You can see it.
But Sharia is an excellent example of bad and good PR, because speaking as a lawyer, the one thing that lawmakers crave is more mediation. They want less litigation and more mediation, and the perfect way of doing that is to have a sort of Sharia system where things are done by mediation. There are mediated settlements. But the image that unfortunately that Sharia has is of executions, hangings, beheadings, all the rest of it.
Hands being cut off, the next one said. Yeah.
Whereas that's not what obviously what Sharia is about. Sharia is about effective, efficient, cost-effective, satisfactory settlements. Because nobody wants litigation at the end of the day. What they want is a situation. So whoever the mediator is, whether it's an imam, whether it's a family head, whether it's a elder of the community, if they are appointed to mediate a settlement which avoids the costs of going to court and going through the court system, then great. But that sort of system needs to be promoted more, in place of this sort of image of Sharia and Sharia courts, which is one of medieval barbarism.
So you're talking about almost like a rebranding and educating the mainstream.
It's just about rebranding,
You see, this is all prevention, Simon. I see this as prevention rather than cure. And we were talking about dealing with the symptoms. it is you have to deal with your institutions, you have to deal with your curriculums, you have to deal with understanding what your Islam is in the context of a British society. And unless the Muslim, I'm sorry to say, if the Muslim community doesn't want to have a reality pill, doesn't want to take a reality check on reviewing those things and creating standards of excellence.
Consequence.
There will be consequences.
Nonetheless.
Standards of excellence, Bilal. Every society has to review and analyze its practice.
Checks and balances.
And you can't live in the 7th century or the 12th century. You've got to do it by the modern day standards and according to the environment you're living in. I'm sorry to say our institutions generally are falling very short in terms of the quality of service we deliver, the content we deliver, and the community itself as a result is a product of that teaching. The home, the Muslim home is also an institution. And what we're producing there, I mean, let's come down to the nuts and bolts of it. When you're raising these children at home, and we think we're dealing with it all in an Islamic way and it's all very halal, first of all, we've got fundamental issues about understanding environmental sustainability and the connection to Islam. We don't understand whether a battery farmed chicken is halal or haram yet. We don't understand whether giving a child a transactional education is halal or haram. We don't understand whether ethics is taught in our education system. We don't bother to understand whether psychology is important. We don't teach them political awareness. We don't teach them sort of cultural awareness. Emotional intelligence. All of these things which are fundamental parts of the prophetic teaching. The Prophet raised Imam Hussein and Imam Hassan, he raised Imam Ali alayhi salam, Bibi Fatima, the Ahlul Bayt, raised a family, an institution based on perfection, complete. And don't tell me the Prophet didn't talk about environmental sustainability. He was the first one to create it in Medina. The minute he was there, he created a zone which was environmentally sustainable and sort of completely compatible with looking after trees, the animals, the wildlife, and making it balanced. We don't want to admit that we've actually fundamentally are capitalist consumerists. We're less Islamic, we're more consumerist capitalist. There's not much difference between our actual cultural practice and what our aspirations are in life from what we often will criticize, i.e. consumer capitalism gone mad. Nothing wrong with capitalism in its own, in the right way, but when it's consumerist and materialist to the point where ethics becomes no longer an issue.
Without a muzzle, without a rein in it,
So if our halal butchers and if our buying and our shopping and if our sort of the way we grow things and the way we, our lifestyle and what clothes we purchase and whether they're from sweatshops or not, if those are not considerations within the Muslim society, I would say fundamentally we've got a problem with our ethics about the way we understand our Islam. And if the outside world picks on the obvious manifestations of differences between us, like Sharia laws, hijabs, circumcision, halal food, that's cosmetic. I'm worried about that, of course, because they're the institutions, the obvious things that the Islamophobic industry will pick on to destroy you, right? But underlying those systems that we've created is another fundamental problem, that we've not really viewed our Islam in a way which is truly prophetic according to the prophetic dream. We've not connected it to life.
Now you're going deep. I'm aware of the plight or the position of young Muslims, particularly young Muslims, I would say, that were born into Muslim families, not just people who have through their own critical thinking and by the grace of Allah have come to Islam at a young age, but those who were born from parents who have come from other parts of the, different parts of the Muslim world, growing up, but being born in this country and growing up in this country and being in a kind of situation where there is a pull from popular culture, from youth culture, from what's going on in the streets, and I don't necessarily mean criminal activity, but just what's hot and what's the latest in the streets, and to traditional demands of conservative parents and communities, which, don't have a clue necessarily of what's really going on in the world of the young people. And I'm wondering how we can best equip them to go forward and deal with anti-Muslim sentiments, because obviously there's going to be young people who are going to be going through identity crises, like young sisters who know, okay, some people are being attacked for wearing hijab, so my hijab's going to get more, that bit smaller or disappear. And, one thing leads to the next. Or for young brothers who may get involved in certain type of activities to fit in, in a kind of like a what they perceive as an anti-Muslim environment. So how can we equip our young people, or give some hope, some aspirations for them? You mentioned, for example, PR training, but is there a type of new educational, not new educational curriculum, but something we need to add to help to equip the young people?
Well, I just take it back to what we were saying earlier. What I was saying earlier, and there's not a one-size-fits-all form of Islam. Mm-hmm. So I was talking earlier about marriage and spouse selection. You can go on YouTube and find all sorts of speeches from scholars, from ulama, about how to go about choosing a spouse. Mm-hmm. And the right way of conducting a wedding ceremony, a right way of doing this, about the right way of marital relations. But if you go back to the Quran, how does that then relate to marrying someone outside Islam? If you choose to marry somebody outside the deen, and relating to somebody outside the deen, what does that mean? So the assumption has been, from what you hear, that you're going to marry another Muslim. You're going to marry within your culture, most of the time. Whereas what you need to think about is, well, I'm allowed to think wider than that. I'm allowed to think outside the box. So what does it mean? And that might mean just thinking it through yourself. Okay, this is what the scholars say about the right way to do X, Y, and Z. How do then I apply that to my situation? If I want to do something a bit different, then how do I go about it in an Islamic way? So it is an understanding, in my view, that there's not one size fits all. There's not one sort of category of.
My solutions, it's always the same. Education is key. There's firefighting, and there's long-term solutions. Firefighting is for the immediate tackling of this issue of Islam. It's upon us. Everywhere they go, the kids are going to face this, in school, on the telly, wherever they're going, social media, it's around them all the time. So you have to have a strategy and policy, first of all, to deal with the immediacy of the problem and the complexes this is going to build up amongst kids, and the actual physical traumas as well, perhaps for victims. So there's one set of investment that we have to do in analysing, getting professionals on board to analyse the problem, to look at the situations, to do case studies, to come up with solutions. Solutions just don't come from your head. They've got to be mapped out. You've got to invest in the research. You've got to invest in knowledge, building up the data, building up the evidence, and being able to define. Now that also takes time, but at least you have to make a start on that. That's for your immediate side. The other side is the long-term stuff. At the heart of both of the techniques, even the long-term solutions, are three things. There may be others, I can think of three. One is equip these children with critical inquiry skills, as said earlier. Once you give...
That term keeps coming up.
Keeps coming up, yeah, because it's vital. It's actually giving
Challenge what you think you know.
It's questioning. Questioning is what a child does from birth, and it learns through that questioning.
Yeah.
When you stop children asking questioning, what happens is they stop researching and looking for answers. Right now, second thing is develop reason and logic, because we assume that people are logical and they understand what analogical reasoning is, or reasoning is per se. But the number of times you get into a debate or discussion with somebody and they're actually totally lacking reason in what they're saying is shocking. So reason is a big thing we're missing in our build-up of a lot of our children.
Okay.
The third thing is imagination. To nurture the imagination, the ability to be able to think deeply, philosophically, creatively, futuristically. This ability to let kids explore their creativity.
So this is the arts now. You're talking about the arts.
Yeah. Now, if you don't have a diet of at least those three things, they're the root, they're the tools that kids need to make decisions, make their minds up, right, in the long run. And you see, if they had those tools, in a real life situation, somebody comes to ask them a question. If they had the reason skills, the imagination skills, and the critical inquiry skills, they'd have already gone on a journey up to the age of 15, 16, 17, where they would have started to make sense of the world, or sense of Islam.
Yes.
And if they had made sense of Islam, when they get to 17 or 18, and people start asking them in the real world about their religion, they're now equipped to be able to go through things logically, imaginatively, and critically, and be able to present a sane view of themselves, thereby immediately stopping the opportunity for Islamophobes to pick on all the ignorance, to pick holes in that ignorance and paint that child or that community as being backward from the dark ages and part of some voodoo culture or something that nobody understands here. So I think those three things are pivotal in terms of firefighting and long term. Practically, the institutional leaders have to take a deep look at themselves and stop playing power politics and stop being ego driven, and actually also not prioritize foreign projects. Start investing in your youth here, and don't just use the word youth, because your youth aren't in your centres. They're not in. I don't see them in.
I'm inferring that there's a consequence if you do not invest. If everything's, the bigger investment is abroad, and you're not dealing with here, that the consequence is that the imam
you will not be able to invest
will
in the
have
future.
less and less young. Expect to see less and less young people.
Yeah, not even that. Where are your charities, which you are now £670 is the average Muslim per person per year contribution to charitable causes?
Wow.
There's there may be 2 million working Muslims, or 3 million at least they say in the country who are here. That's a lot of money. 90% is going towards welfare abroad. Nothing. I'm not knocking it. Why not invest 10% in your own kids here, and then start countering that statistic where your children are 3 times more likely to be in prison, or 3 times more likely to be unemployed, or 3 times more. Are you not concerned? It shocks. Why is the community not concerned about these things? That their kids are more likely to be criminalised, more likely to be unemployed, more likely not to have a sense of solid identity. Is this of no concern? Is it that you can pay a poor child abroad and that appeases your conscience, but your own child is wallowing in ignorance and all sorts of moral inequity?
Well, he's got new parent likes on, so it's harder to see maybe the consequences. And not to be honest, there may be not so many platforms where this type of information is really explored and discussed. It's a kind of a uncomfortable reality.
So Bilal, the thing is, if you don't invest in those children tomorrow, they won't be contributing to those welfare causes abroad. That £670 at the moment will reduce to zero, because you haven't trained your children to be Muslims. They're not
to value Islam. Yeah.
And I think that our focus, the institutions are culpable. We as parents are culpable, and there are solutions, and you don't have to invent solutions. They're all there. We live in the West. Most of the research that exists for other faith communities, the Jewish community is a great example of solving problems, creating holistic systems as well. I'm not talking about Zionism. Everybody wants to jump on those.
Jews.
There are intelligent Jewish communities which have the religious beliefs, and very similar religious beliefs to Muslims. The Talmudic emphasis on orthopraxy is no different from the Sharia. They are even more meticulous in terms of linking ritual to religion, their religion. Now, those communities face the same problems. Maybe you can learn something from them because they've survived for millennia as travelers, as foreign, immigrants in foreign lands. I think that we need to look at best practice outside our own communities as well. I think we need to.
Many will be afraid of that. Because they feel the fear of contamination.
No, you see, we're all human beings. Imam Ali alayhi salam said, first is your brother in faith, and then is your brother in humanity. He didn't distinguish. He said there's something and wisdom can come from your enemy. Wisdom can come from, even those who commit wrong are teaching you something. Somebody who is evil, when you observe evil, you're acknowledging that what good might be, because you're contrasting it. So knowledge is everywhere, wisdom is everywhere. So caging ourselves, creating a fortress Islam, shutting doors down, is not going to tackle Islamophobia. Islamophobia is there because people don't understand it. What you don't understand is what you fear. Ignorance is what creates fear. And I'm telling you, in my experience, Middle England doesn't know about Islam, it doesn't know about Muslims, and what it does know and what it's being trained with is scaring the hell out of them. And it's only, I think, that the liberal tolerance and that natural aversion to revolution within the British mindset which prevents them from reacting to what's been going on for 15, 20 years, or the diet that they've been given about Muslims.
The drip approach that they've received,
But how long will that last? You know, it will only take 5 or 6 terror incidents and for people to feel the immediacy of that terror to start making people very nervous. You know, and that's not in our control. And you know, if I listen to some people and they say that, you know, this could be triggered through false flag operations, then I think we're very vulnerable. And I think that we need to act very decisively. I think we have a state of emergency as a community, which is quantifiable. Evidence is there. And I think that, you know, you have to take heed from the Jewish community again. I'm going to bring them back because they do not tolerate. You know, there's something called zero tolerance. You know,
yeah.
Zero tolerance. Why would you tolerate even one Muslim being attacked? Why do we tolerate even sort of one bit? We shouldn't tolerate any of it. We shouldn't have to, and we should act. But you know, I think that whether the community leadership and whether parents are more engaged with the transactional and the economic, and this doesn't matter to them, is the real vital issue for me. We're coming up with solutions. Our solution is, first of all, let's get a plan. Let's analyze, let's research, let's do those basic things that are required, you know, not knee-jerk reactions all the time. And, and that requires talking to your children, it requires being engaged with your society. And the solutions are going to be relatively easy if you bother to turn your attention to them and invest in them. And invest in those professionals who can give you the best escape routes.
Invest. Brother Simon, you are a professional in the legal field. Are there even existing legal avenues to recourse? Because there are people that may watch this. We're not necessarily saying we're setting up a legal clinic and giving specific advice to specific cases, but just asking you from a legal point of view, are there some things that may benefit Muslims to be aware of in terms of their rights under the law?
Well, that's a very broad topic. I mean, just to bring it back to the youth. I mean, and PR. I think one thing that can be achieved, I think, is to promote the idea of Sharia in society, because you know, the court system is sort of is overwhelmed with cases now, and the expense of taking cases, court fees going higher and higher and higher, and you know, and it's out of control. What Sharia I would say is where Sharia is important is to say, well, no, what we need is mediated settlements. What we need is quick solutions, because a lot of litigation is based on lack of communication, lack of understanding, and this is something that imams, whoever, can have a role in promoting their services to people involved in the court system, to link up with the Ministry of Justice, and to say, we offer this free of charge service to people involved in the court system. They can advertise it within the courts or wherever on their website, and say, yes, we can take people out of the court system. They can come and visit us free of charge. We can have impartial, independent mediation services, yes, run by a Muslim cleric, but open to non-Muslims, with a view to sorting their settlement. And that's an important PR objective that can be used to overcome these very exclusionist perceptions that people have of Islam, of Sharia.
Muslims, So like a proactive approach, and
so that's
proactive, practical approach.
That's a proactive that can easily be done. You know, if people have the willpower, the motivation. You know, this idea. You know, as we've said before, it's a two-way thing. So Sharia isn't just for Muslims; it can be offered to Muslims and non-Muslims alike. Free, impartial settlements can be offered as a tool, I think, to improve relations and the image of Islam generally.
One to bear in mind, the time, gentlemen, brothers, the time has gone so quickly. Must bear in mind that word free is probably going to help promote the cause. That's always helpful. Thank you so much for sparing the time and for your opinions, your points of view, and thank you for staying with us for the duration of Breaking Boundaries. Till next time, stay safe, and assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuhu.